Welcome back. You're still watching the Afia Morning Show live from Enugu, Nigeria. I am Nathalie Uku. And of course, I'm not here alone. I wonder what it would be like if I were here by myself. Oji Wachuku is always here.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning, Oji. Leading the charge. Leading the entourage.
Well, sadly, but greatly.
Would you be defected to the All Progressives Congress?
I'm not a politician. Right? And well, that paradigm shift, that's big shift from what it used to be, 26 years of dominance just to be lost in a day, by the way. But we're just hopeful and hoping that, aligning with a renewed hope would bring good tidings to the Enugu, as they say that if you block to the center, you have more deals and more rails, right? So just hoping.
It's starting to look like some kind of umbilical cord. But let's watch and see. We're not here alone. Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa is here, the Executive Director, Lead Network Africa. Mr. CEO, it's so good to have you.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
I mean, as this is happening, we're seeing ASUU doing another. They said UNN has turned to ghost town because the lecturers have downed tools. What's your first reaction?
I think there's always room for that agitation because over time, government promises when it comes to strengthening education, investing more, improving the welfare of workers, oftentimes doesn't achieve the intended purpose. So some of these agitations, disruptions in the learning activities is reasonably expected as a way to register displeasure and see if the government and political actors can actually place education where it ought to be. And that is, it should be a priority, a core priority for the nation.
All right, let's take a look at headlines because that seems to be the major story this morning, well, for some dailies. We begin with New Telegraph, electoral reforms. NAS proposes November 2026 for presidential and gubernatorial polls. Once litigation resolved before swearing in, stakeholders demand electronic voting transmission of results. ASUU strike, federal government enforces no work, no pay, direct roll call headcount. PDP will hold best convention in history despite defections. Makinde speaks. OPEC, Nigeria's oil production declined to 1.390 million barrels per day in September. Straight to Daily Sun, Enugu agog as Governor Mba defects to the All Progressives Congress. Shetima, Akpabio, Abbas, Yilwatda governors, others to receive him. ASUU strike, federal government directs VCs to enforce no work, no pay. Nobody can threaten us, PIWUNA, ASUU president posits. Alleged Christian genocide, nothing will break Nigeria, Sultan of Sokoto tells the United States. Stop destroying people's property, Obi warns federal governments and governors. Tinubu, Eno, Kalo, CAN, mourn renowned cleric, Umar Ukbai. Defections, PDP will triumph, Makinde tells party members. Cautions against attempts to scuttle National Convention. On this day, religious leaders reject U.S. claim of genocide against Nigerian Christians. 2027 National Assembly proposes November 2026 for presidential governorship elections. Targets end to post swearing-in litigations. And Nigeria's economic recovery tangible, rooted in fiscal consolidation, sectoral resilience. Straight to the Nation, Mba opens another gale of governors' defections to APC. Shetima, Yilwatda, Akpabio, Abbas to receive governor. PDP won't despair, says Makinde. Federal government directs VCs to enforce no work, no pay rule.
Okay, starting from The Guardian. 72.64% of Nigeria's petrol imported amid rivalry from new refineries. NAS proposes November 2026 for next general elections. Dangote warns against using monopoly claims to discourage local investment. Defections, Makinde insists Nigerians hold ultimate verdict. Labour wades into FGRSU rifts as strike ground vasties nationwide. FG's multi-billion naira FCT Homes project excites judiciary. I'm moving over to Nigerian Tribune. NAS proposes November 2026 for 2027 presidential governorship polls. And once all election cases concluded before swearing in, may make use of PVCs not mandatory. Criminalizes non-stamping of ballot papers, result sheets. Stakeholders back electronic transmission of results. Reps PDP caucus raises alarm over plot to truncate national convention, seeks National Judicial Commission's intervention. Defection not peculiar to PDP, says Makinde. Governors, traditional rulers push for constitutional recognition of traditional institutions. FG raises alarm over terror financing, smuggling, security agencies crack down on terror groups. FG directs VCs to implement no work, no policy. More varsities join strike. We are not part of ASUU strike, says CONUA. Transcorp Power posts 91.2 billion naira profit after tax with 38% revenue growth. And lastly, on Nigerian Tribune, how Trump brokered historic Israel-Palestine pact to end Gaza conflict. Moving over to The Punch. 2027, opposition splits over NAS poll shift plan. NAS bill seeks to move presidential governor polls to November 2026. PDP and NPP alleged tenor extension plots. ADC LP differ. ASUU strike grounds varsities. FG clamps down. Makinde wants Wike camp against stopping PDP convention. Retired AIG leads probe into killings of Oshun Amotokun. Slain husband's family slams Tinubu's pardon for Mariam Sanda. Boronu maintains lead as 7.4 million complete online voter registration. Lagos rearranged kidnapped Kingpin Evans over 2 cops murder. Fubara swears in SSG cautions against power abuse. And moving over to the last one right here, Daily Trust. Mariam Sanders' release was injustice to us, says husband's family. Super Eagles face Benin in must-win World Cup qualifier today. Enugu commissioners quit PDP as Mba joins APC. National Assembly wants elections to hold earlier. Soldier allegedly commits suicide after killing wife in Niger. 10 governors attend traditional rulers meeting in Lagos. Cameroon's coalition claims early victory in presidential poll. And lastly, Vasti's short. ASUU rejects no work, no pay policy.
All right, quite a musical end there, Oji. Let's take a look at the first headline here. I would like us to look at Daily Sun. But before we get into it, we'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll start accessing these headlines. Do stay tuned. Thank you for staying tuned. You're still watching the Afia Morning Show. Of course, now we take a look at the headlines with Mr. Chukwuma Ephraim Okenwa. So let's begin from the front and center of Daily Trust. ASUU strike. Federal government directs VCs to enforce no work, no pay. Do you think that's a fair policy now that ASUU has embarked on its 2-week warning strike?
Certainly not. What is reasonably expected of the government is to get to the negotiation table. I see that as intimidation and completely strange to democracy. Because, workers, they have rights. I mean, come on, what makes the FG think that if workers should say if our conditions are not met, let's come on the table, we stop working. And then the next thing is, okay, if you're not going to work, then we're not going to pay. Then collectively, you're using that trust and the collective powers given to you by the citizens to oppress the citizens.
Right.
Playing with an institution that breeds, that positions our younger generation to take over, what is the outcome of this in years to come of we always paying lip service to educational system in Nigeria and our leaders? As we stated right here, no work, no pay policy. Is that a way to go? in an institution that is meant to be taken seriously in a nation, an institution that builds a nation, what will be the outcome in years to come for these things that we are perpetrating at this point in time?
As a matter of fact, the outcome is already everywhere, of not investing adequately into a quality education. You consider dysfunctionality that for those in the private sector, sometimes to hire just an employee to do a particular work. You oftentimes faced with the challenge of babysitting people, because what they just went to the Nigerian universities in most cases is to waste their time because of lack of adequate investment. Now, when you now look into the future, you can only amplify the obvious, because it does appear that, it's on the decline. There's increasing learning crisis, ranging from primary to secondary and now to universities, such that, for someone to have a 2-1 in any particular discipline does not automatically equate proficiency and competence.
That's right. So let's move away from there now. Look at the nation and front and center. Mba opens another gale of governors' defection to APC. That's the biggest news. All eyes on Enugu today, at least for Enugu State. What's your take on this move by the state's governor to join the All Progressives Congress? We also saw yesterday government officials joining in the defection, waving the APC flag, or shall we say sweeping the APC flag, right? And Enugu East chairperson as well doing same. What's your overall reaction?
Okay, so I'm going to react in 3 ways. First is on a lighter mood. Just reflecting. In a typical house, are you likely to have broom than umbrella? Broom is like an everyday affair where you have to whether you need an umbrella to go out during the rain or not, and it's only for the rainy days, and if you must have to go about. Of course, you need your broom to sweep the house every day, but that's on a lighter mood. Secondly, it's an indication of a worrisome situation. Nigeria is gradually drifting into a one-party state, howbeit with great deal of corruption. Not like in China where they have a one-party state and it's regulated, because even corrupt officials within the party, you face the dance, right? So it is worrisome that Nigeria is, this will be the 23rd state, almost 2/3 of Nigeria now. It's now one party, and PDP has entirely lost in the southeast. So I'm really sad that there's no major opposition now in Nigeria. But of course, the third thing I want to say is that it is a strategic move, for the governor, basically. Yes, we know there will always be pull and push factors when it comes to reasons for defections. Maybe the pull factors could be like the so-called being at the center, but empirically, as a scholar, from my evaluation, it doesn't really exist. That maybe being in the center. For instance, Imo that have been in the center, how many senators, how many ministers did they get? Because one of the things that would have been okay in the southeast, if Enugu just got one minister, right? And then maybe we should have expected more for Ebonyi and Imo, and then also in terms of projects. So it's more of hypothetical than empirical. The next thing would now be apart from looking at the pull factors, the push factors. We know that PDP now, it's at your own risk to start the party, because the exodus of some big wigs like Atiku earlier on, right? Some critical stakeholders, senators, marked like an indication that perhaps this roof is no more safe and it may collapse on those that are found in the building. And to that, since politics is all about interest and party is a vehicle to get your strategic interest and objectives achieved, you wouldn't expect Mba to stay in a PDP and the building will collapse on his head. Because certainly at the moment, it's a bit dicey for anyone that is in the party at the moment.
You paint a picture. I like how you alluded to a house, structure's gone more or less and then about to collapse. That's a really strong pictorial representation you've drawn. So what would you say would be the shortcomings of remaining in the People's Democratic Party?
Honestly, you see, the problem and the great mistake that PDP made. PDP was actually meant to be like a party for the people and the masses and for the generality of Nigeria. But unfortunately, PDP funding model was polarized. And Wike for long funded PDP, right? And then over time, his grouse, and you could see his dexterity to ensure that nothing is left of the party at the moment now, being in APC and PDP at the same time. So he's like the umpire, of the political terrain, right? But come to think of it, if you're like a Wike, you funded the structure for years, and all of a sudden, an article shows up, a Tambuwa that have been a strong ally, right? Decide to parley with the article, and you are betrayed. So Wike is on a vendetta mission, and anybody that is in the party knows that the easiest way that he would do that when he was bragging is going to set fire in any state. I mean, party is really supreme. Because why party is supreme is just like what happened in Labour. If you stay in Labour, and maybe the case has gotten out to the level of Supreme Court, and there's no decisive decision, right? They are referring you back to where you started, that there's a party constitution you need to look into and all the rest of it. Then you find out that you cannot do anything, because if you do, someone could create a faction in that state. And the next thing you can be in the court till the election is over, because you are just a candidate. I mean, during another electoral season. So Mba has looked at it critically and found out that remaining in that party will mean that his chances will be dicey and will be single-handedly decided by a Wike in Abuja.
So apparently, it's more of like a personal interest than the interest of the
It's more of political survival.
Political survival.
Yes.
Because they always throw us with this whole plug to the center, you have more dividends for the people. But you also put in consideration what's happening in Ebonyi State and also Imo. Ebonyi is like the poorest state in the southeast,
right.
and fourth in Nigeria. NBS reports and all that. So what is that plug to the center? They always, shout about that. If you're plugged to the center, you'll be having more money for projects, and people enjoy more dividends because you're plugged to the center.
It's all about convincing the masses. Getting them to think, because politics has to do with a lot. You have a lot of behind the scene. And then what happens before the masses? So the masses will be wondering, come on, are we really safe with what's the impact of APC nationally, which has had adverse impact on security, on the economy? Are we really safe aligning with this party? So there is that fear naturally. So what political actors, their role would be to tell people, we are safe. We are doing this for your interest. Not necessarily our interest. But for those of us that understand politics clearly, understand that in politics, it is the interest of the politician first and foremost, before anyone else's interest. Because, of course, if Mba doesn't make it to become the governor in the next term, every others that are around him and whatever manifesto he's got cannot come to fruition beyond this first term.
Based on your expertise, do you think that if your own assessment proves to be true, that it's the politician first, if that is the principle like you have assessed, is there another way? Is that the only way?
Well, the simple truth is that, even if you have to consider the masses, right? Where the lines now comes in is the bigness of your interest to accommodate that of the masses. But for the politician, you realize that nobody practically brought you out. Before you say, he was nominated for this and this, you must have indicated interest deep within you. I want to be governor. You started planning, and then all of a sudden scheming, strategizing, and stuff like that. So it will always be the interest of the politician. And most of the time, even though some politicians, by the virtue of their disposition, might seem as if to say they esteem the interest of the masses much more than themselves.
I have a pointed question for you,
Yes.
Mr. Okenwa. Is the shift to APC good for Enugu State?
Well, it's not a black and white answer, because it will just be a function of who is there, which is the governor. If he can continue with his strides, right? The strides of his administration, deepen it, regardless of any political party, because I am aware that no political party, for instance, if the president is from same party, would advise people to work or not to work for their state. You are still the chief executive officer of your state. You know, the only difference will now be that if you want to commit impunity, your impunity now have steers because you've got the national protection.
Would the shift negatively affect or negatively impact Enugu State?
So it all depends on the intent of the administration. Now he's got more strength and less things to fear about. You know, but if he is determined, like I see him as someone determined and focused, then of course Enugu has nothing to fear because it will still be all about the governor. So what has just changed is because the simple truth is that why my own self I'm not bothered. Political parties in Nigeria has been far away from ideologies, right?
Just a vehicle.
It's just a vehicle. That's our reality. Mba wouldn't be the first and he wouldn't be the last. It's just a normal thing, like where are you? The same way people change from one club to another, right?
Well, let's talk about the people of Enugu, with the indigenes, right? And it's something they are conversant with for over 26 years. You know, the grassroots. I'm not talking about people who are politically affiliated right now, politicians or party member, carry members and all that. I'm talking about the people of Enugu State. How do you think they will align with this new order, this new era? Do you think that they could be swayed eventually afterwards? You know,
Yes.
let's leave out the carry members now and political actors who are affiliated to a political party and all that stuff. Talk about the ordinary indigenes, the Enugu, indigenes. Are they going to be swayed with this? Are they going to follow suit? Are they going to align with this new order?
Certainly, they're already aligned, and for two reasons. One of the things I want to say, Mba's defection did not come as a root shock. He's been in the public sphere, right? The question is not will, but when, right? Because the conversation has been on. I mean, when is he going to? We had that. I mean, over time, sometimes you just see, and they say he removed PDP flag. They say, it's 9 p.m. They are wearing no more. You understand? Sometimes you also begin to see some of the appointees of the governor say, well, it's not all about the party. I mean, when somebody begins to talk about it, it's not all about the party. Then you know that something is cooking, right? But beyond not being all about the party and whether people will be swayed. Let me say something, and just like the days of PDP, it's actually now the days of PDP. There is that assumption that Enugu is a PDP state. Do you realize that card-carrying members of political parties in Nigeria are far less than 1% of the Nigerian population? Interestingly, PDP now, for them to even feel that, for instance, Obara Square, which is about 15,000 capacity, they will still rent audience, like it's typical in politics, right? Get people, pay them. But talking about card-carrying members who will bring out themselves, come out and they say, we are defecting with you without incentives, that may not happen in today's Nigeria. So when you now look about how PDP, Enugu have actually been, you find out that it's only like a claim to want to, because with what even happened in 2023, the level of shaking that PDP had, right? I mean, almost the seat of the governorship would have also been lost, right? But we saw 2 Senate seats, right? And then House of Rep, House of Assembly. I mean, it was a tsunami that happened, and someone was like, oh, really? PDP stayed for 24 years then? How PDP indeed is a PDP Enugu? That should be the question.
What does it mean to defect?
Yes, that means you were in one party, you now want to move to another party. And by implication, your allegiance, your alliances has changed. It's all about allegiance and alliances.
Yeah. All this happening right now, one person is actually going to enjoy. Who is that? The president. Ahmed Tinubu, right? Our president. But come 2027 election, yes, we have seen Peter Mba's impact in Enugu State. Nobody can actually debate that. Even when the oppositions were shouting, I'm talking about the Uchenaji and his faction when they were still in APC, by the way. When they were shouting and playing the opposition politics, if they threw out an election yesterday, Peter Mba is still going to floor him, right? But now, all this that is happening right now, one man is going to enjoy. That's our president. But now, come 2027, do you think that a Peter Mba and the APC will sway votes for a Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Yes, we know that people wouldn't mind votes that individual, you have seen his work, the devil you know, right, will vote for Peter Mba. People will vote for Peter Mba. But now the question is, Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a president, come 2027 election.
Well, the question is, swaying the vote for him would also be like using the power of incumbency, maybe for the obvious manipulations associated with politics. But as for like people, the Nigerian people, right? You know, politics is very simple. Forget all the numbers that politicians always give out. When you talk about economy, you always match records with reality. My dear, if before Ahmed came in, right, you found it a little bit less more convenient to afford food, pay for rent, pay for electricity, afford some basic things. Now you struggle more with those things. And then someone is telling you that your hope has been renewed. You'll be wondering if the person is gaslighting you, right? And that's why politicians will always like want to, you know, gaslight the masses, because they know that as for like empirically improving your condition, right? Except for someone, and like honestly, like when I look at Nigeria, fella of blessed memory actually summarized Nigeria's situation, suffering and smiling. Because honestly, look like there are some Nigerians that enjoy suffering. You see that typically this guy doesn't have urgent 2K in his pocket, but he's busy shouting for a politician, saying, Orugeru, where you go, we'll go. I mean, when I look at such kind of people, I'm like, come
45
on.
sitting, 79 standing.
Yeah.
Okay, Nigerian Tribune, speaking about 2027, NAS proposes November 2026 for 2027 presidential and governorship polls. They're saying they're doing this to ensure that all the post-election litigations are handled before swearing in. What's your take on this proposal for elections November next year?
Well, I don't think it's really necessary. You see, the problem actually with the Nigerian society has always been, we leave what is the major thing causing the problem, and we are looking for the symptoms, right? And you don't address issues that way. The problem actually is the judiciary. Do you know, like, I mean, for like presidential election, right? That holds in, I think, February, right? And then you have May for swearing in. Come on, is 90 days not enough to make a decision, right? Why extending it? Is it by extending now that we're going to change what is the major problem, which is the quality of the people we have currently in the judiciary? Integrity obviously lacks in the judiciary. I didn't say so. I mean, a study that was conducted sometime last year found the judiciary as the most corrupt institution in Nigeria. Not the Nigerian police, not the customs, not the immigrations, but the judiciary, not even politicians, right? You know, so when you look at that, you find out that if we don't refocus on the judiciary, fix things to work, we'll always be pointing at the symptoms.
Right.
Give them 1 year to take decision. They will still come up with the usual kind of decisions we see, and that will not help our polity.
Now, on election ground, there another part of this that's quite interesting. May make use of PVCs, not mandatory. Yes, because if the election is moved forward to 2026, then obviously not everybody might have their PVCs ready, especially those who are applying for different issues. So they're saying they may make use of PVCs, but it would not be mandatory to make use of the PVC.
Well, even like, you know, honestly, in Nigeria at the moment, I don't even know what guidelines to endorse. Since at the end of the day, whatever guidelines, right, that INEC puts out there, could still like be an issue of contention, you know, that when parties involved sues INEC and say, you know what, INEC reneged on his own guidelines, the court could, you know, strike off the case as lacking in merit. So it's really a problem. And then we also saw, like in the last judgment, the contention between transfer and transmission, and it's still an issue even after the so-called electoral acts, right? Was reviewed. So I think we basically have a problem of dishonesty, not really telling ourselves what exactly do we want. So it's more or less like the more you look, the less you see.
That's right. Because
at the moment now, anyone that has confidence in BVAS and IRF, do it at his own risk. I mean, we've seen that probably, in fact, the intent was to perpetrate fraud, you know, because we see a lot of gaps,
yes,
you know, where the process started, like what we saw in Edo, You know, PDP was rejoicing, saying Edo no be Lagos. All of a sudden, the IRF, the viewing portal was off. And the next thing, Edo became Lagos 2. You understand? Lagos campus 2.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ephraim, for joining the show.
Yeah,
It's so good
welcome.
to have you. Already out of time, but surely would sit and chat again sometime
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming around here.
You're welcome.
The Morning Show returns in seconds. When we come back, we'll be looking at regional stories. Stay tuned.